5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened, fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. This is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on CreativeLive? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours. If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline? It's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into CreativeLive TV today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creative Live. Welcome to Creative Live TV. Welcome to the We Are Photographers podcast. I'm your host, Kenna Klosterman. We are coming to you live today from my living room to wherever it is that you are probably staying at home, staying safe. So want to, again, say that I hope that you are all doing well. We here at Creative Live, if you're watching on creativelive.com/TV, if you're watching on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, we welcome you to join the conversation. About a little over a month ago, we started Creative Live TV to continue to connect us all as creatives, all of you out there. A lot of times now we can feel unconnected, so we want you to connect, be entertained, be inspired, and man, today you are going to be inspired by my guest for the We Are Photographers podcast. His name is Filipe DeAndrade, and he is an incredible human being. When I first met him a couple weeks ago, virtually, of course, I was like, you're my new favorite human because you have so much energy and spunk and spirit for life. He is a filmmaker, 10 times Emmy Award winner. He is a conservationist. He is the host for the Nat Geo WILD show Untamed. And so I am pleased to have Filipe DeAndrade here today. Philippe, how are you doing?
Kenna, that was the most vicious, delicious, the most heartwarming intro I've ever received. Completely undeserving of it, but thank you anyways. That means a lot that you would conjure up all those nice words in that order for me. Thank you for that.
Oh, please. You truly are an inspiration, and I'm super excited. We had you on Creative Live TV a couple of weeks ago to share a lot of the work that you're doing, and we had such a great response from the community watching and seeing the work that you do that we wanted to bring you on. And We Are Photographers, the podcast, is really more about your story as a human, as a creative, even more so than the work itself. So I'm super excited to dive into who you are and why you do what you do today. And so again, everybody, if you are watching on creativelive.com TV, click on the chat icon, tell us where you're tuning in from, as well as on Facebook and all of that. So Phil, I want to start out with, you have made the statement that you believe that animals saved your life and you want to return the favor. Talk to me about how animals saved your life.
Well, I guess if we're going to have Mother Goose time, we might as well get right into it, right? Like no creative, no, metaphorical foreplay of like, oh, what kind of camera do you use? What's your favorite lens on assignment? Nope. Right away, like give us your personal journey. All right, let's get into it. So for me, I relate so much with wildlife in the sense where, people often say that animals don't have a voice. And I couldn't disagree with that statement more because I truly believe that animals are talking to us all the time. I mean, they're using body language, they're using their own interpretation of intelligence, which is different than ours, not any less significant than ours, just different. And when we start to pay attention, when we start to speak it, and more importantly, when we start to listen to animals' languages, we start to understand the world around us and what they're telling us and why they're telling us what they're telling us. So for me, in my personal life, I immigrated to the United States. I was raised by a single mother. We had some very challenging circumstances, and I felt like nobody was listening to me. I felt like I didn't have this platform. I felt like I had to hide for much of my life because, of the circumstance that we were in, being illegal immigrants for 14 years. And I felt like nobody was listening to me. But more importantly, again, I didn't have that stage. I didn't have that platform. So I related with wildlife so much because I felt like we weren't listening to animals. And it was when I truly dove into telling their stories, sharing the circumstances of nature, what nature is going through and what we humans are doing to it, that I found my own voice. I found my own platform, my own microphone, and that truly became the camera. I mean, I think that, you think about medieval times, you think about Lord of the Rings and wielding these dragons and these swords and, like the camera right now, the microphone, the pen, that is the greatest weapon we have at our disposal as human beings, because sharing stories is innately what not just humans but creatures do. I mean, the humpback whale song travels generations. It changes through generations. And so we're no different in that we can share our stories. And so I just found a way to share my story, which was these animals saved me at a time in my life when I couldn't connect with anything else. And so now I feel it's my responsibility to tell their stories.
Wow. There's so many things in what you just said that I want to dive further into. I mean, just the concept of animals, going back to just animals speaking to us in all these different ways, and you being drawn to those experiences. You have had so many incredible experiences with animals. And I'm curious if there's one memory that you have where you kind of first realize like this, I'm up close and personal with this particular animal and we are having this energetic exchange connection. Like, can you just take us to a story?
Kenna, come on. I've got ADHD as if I put too much Red Bull in my coffee. I can't sit still for 2 minutes. And you're going to make me pick one story? You're going to make me narrow it down into one? Okay. Well, if I had to pick one moment, if I had to pick an instance that truly stuck out to me in my life so far, in my career so far, I would have to say that it's the experience that I've had with the Jaguar. And for me, the very first thing that I feared in life was the Jaguar. I mean, I was, born in Brazil, and very early on, my mom would tell me, Philippe's like, stop being a little shits or else the Jaguars is going to get you. And even when we moved to the States, like, do your homework or the Jaguars is going to get you. I don't know why she made everything plural. I don't know why she thought that Jaguars were going to take a hold of me in Cleveland, Ohio. But the point is that the Jaguar was always that, like, it was my boogeyman. Right? Like, it wasn't like, don't ride your bike too far down the street, you might get stolen. It was like, stop climbing that tree and get in bed by like 10 p.m. because the jaguar is going to eat you. And so that fear that I had for the jaguar turned into fascination, and that fascination turned into a calling. And my first National Geographic film was on the jaguar. It was called Jaguar Beach, where on this very special beach in Costa Rica, sea turtles are aggregating their nesting period. They're coming up by the tens of thousands. And while doing so, jaguars are coming out of the jungle and feeding on them. So I had to stalk these jaguars. I had to become a cat. I had to stop thinking like Filipe DeAndrade. I had to get down on all fours. I had to start smelling, taking in the environmental changes around me and reacting to those changes and anticipating what was about to happen. Because when you're stalking a predator, you need to get in the mindset of a predator. You can't be reacting to situations. You need to be ahead of the situations. So if I was to document the jaguar, I needed to start thinking like the jaguar. And inevitably, what ended up happening is I spent 21 days, in a hide, what felt like a dragon's womb. I mean, losing 10 pounds a night, sweating it out. So many mosquitoes that I swore I was going to be lifted up off that beach, carried away by mosquitoes. Don't recommend that. If that was an Airbnb, like a half a star on Yelp, like would not recommend to a friend. This camera hide that I was sitting in 120 degrees in the jungle in the middle of the night. But what came of it was this experience, this interaction, this moment, being about 15 feet away from the third largest big cat in the world with the most formidable bite force of any big cat in the jaguar. And the jaguar, it gets what that word means in its native tongue is that which can kill within a single bound. So they're the ultimate ambush predator. They sneak up on the prey, and then literally within one bound, they can pounce on it. And jaguars kill differently than other big cats, where like a lion or a tiger will suffocate by, closing down on the throat. The jaguar kills by piercing the back of the skull and crushing the skull and brain of their prey. So this is an animal you don't want to mess around with. This is an animal that, carries the spirit and vigor of the jungle and all the secrets that it hides. And so when I had the opportunity to be 15 feet away from this animal, I felt like it gave me that opportunity. It shared that moment with me. It knew I was there long before I knew it was there. And when that animal looked at me, it looked through me. And I will never forget what I felt like on the beach that day in the middle of the Costa Rican jungle, 5 hours removed from the next closest human being, having this animal that allowed me to experience it and share the same space with it felt like all the efforts, all of the hard work that I had put into a single frame revealed a side of nature, revealed a side of storytelling, and a reward that I never imagined. I mean, my life changed when I saw that animal for the first time. And what ended up happening even more so is 2 months after I left, that female jaguar that I saw for the first time, she gave birth to 2 young cubs. They let me name one of them. I named it Jane after my idol, Jane Goodall. And the biologist named the other one Philippe. So there's a little Philippe jaguar cub running around on the beaches right now.
Philippe, that is incredible.
So the jaguar.
Wow. Wow. It just the fact, first of all, the whole thing. And no wonder, just listening to you, we've got some folks who are tuning in online right now. Gabrielle is saying, I love his energy. It's so contagious. Totally agree with you. But that through all of that, what was your biggest fear through this experience of connecting with the jaguar to now there be a little one that's named after you? That's just, okay. That's amazing.
Yeah. I think it's and the fascinating thing for me is fear. A lot of times we see it within society, we see it in culture, we see it in politics. Like fear can be the biggest motivator a lot of times, but it's there and it's there for a reason. And when you challenge your fear, a beautiful thing happens. I believe that fear is not there to keep you from doing something. It's just there to allow you to be in the moment, be present with the situation at hand, and to make you think about, are you doing this the smartest way? How is your approach paying off? Is it paying off? Like, what is the experience for the subject on the other side of the lens, not just the experience that you're having? So fear can be a beautiful, powerful, inspiring, motivating thing that if you don't allow it to control you, life happens.
I agree so much. And I mean, it's clearly evident in the work that you do that you have had to push through so many fear-based situations, or what I would put myself in as fear-based situations. But that, I mean, again, the fear, and in all the studying that you do of animals, like fear is a natural thing to protect us, like you said, as well. Like it's something in our brains that's happening, and then the fear part of our brain is that instinctual part, and so, you know, yeah, it's a beautiful way to recognize the value that fear brings to us. I want to turn to Jane Goodall, because you have in your Instagram, and you guys, if you are not already, please go follow Philippe on Philippe _ DeAndrade. His images are phenomenal, and films and all of it.
That's great.
But you have on there in your, you know, highly esteemed bullet points that you hugged Jane Goodall. So tell me about hugging Jane Goodall, because I would hug her if I was placed in the room with her. if she would allow me to.
Okay, let me tell you about, and I know we don't have all the time in the world. I mean, Mother Goose time, I could go on forever. Remember, I have ADHD, so you got to try to wheel in what's happening up here. Nuggets from my noggin, so to speak, but we can get carried away with the nuggets really easily. But my first experience with Jane Goodall had stemmed from my Jaguar documentary. So I was documenting the Jaguar back in 2018, I believe. Forgive me if I'm misplacing the timing, but it was when Hurricane Nate, Tropical Storm Nate, hit Central America. It displaced about 500,000 people in Costa Rica. I mean, this was like a class 4. This was intense. And I was on a remote beach, and what ended up happening is the area flooded so much that crocodiles, American crocodiles, were starting to surround the biology station. So it was me, one other filmmaker, the producer on the team, and then 2 biologists. So the four of us in this biology station held up for 5 straight days, unable to leave because there were new rivers, there were like new challenges. Literally, the landscape changed right in front of us after this tropical storm hit, and we could not get out. So we had to wait as the rivers and the waters receded. The crocodiles made their way away from the ranger station, and we had to hike out of there, carrying our camera gear over our heads in literally like a 30-something mile day through the mountains, through the jungles, through the mangroves, through the beaches of Costa Rica, to be able to be evacuated out of this national park. And I missed my flight. I was supposed to be on my way to meet my idol, Jane Goodall, like Mother Nature herself. I was supposed to be on a flight to go to her premiere at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles for her documentary, Jane, which was an Oscar-nominated film. I was finally going to meet my idol in downtown LA, and a tropical storm hit. I thought this was the universe calling me and being like, dude, not your turn, not going to happen. Like, no, don't get anywhere near. Like, Mother Nature was reacting in a way that it's like Jane's bodyguard. Like, we don't want this weird Brazilian around her. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. The sobbing is going to fill up the floor and everybody in the room is going to drown. We don't need that situation on our hands. So we had to be evacuated out of this situation. I missed my flight to go to LA. I caught the next flight out the day after, we got out of there. And I finally got to be in front of her. I mean, I probably still had crocodile poop in my hair. I was wearing the same clothes that I was in the jungle with. And I got to hug and embrace Jane. And the energy, the conversation, the looks, the enthusiasm that she gave me at a time where she could have been so standoffish. It was about like 11:30 at night, the day before the premiere of her film, and everybody's like paparazzi style around her. And for her to give me the time that she did, I will never, ever, ever forget that. All the things that she's accomplished, I read Through the Window when I was in 6th grade. I read Africa in My Blood a couple years later, and she became my inspiration. But that 5 to 7 minutes that she gave me was enough for me to know that if I want to become Jane, if I want to carry the torch that she's passing on to the next generation of conservationists, the most important thing that I can do is share in somebody else's experience when hopefully I become the next Jane Goodall. I mean, she could have been rude to me. She could have been tired and been like, sorry, dude, like you smell like Bigfoot's toenail clippings. I got to get to my hotel room. I got a big day tomorrow. I don't know if you know, but I got a premiere in Hollywood Bowl. But that embrace that she gave me, for me, was the most important thing she's ever given me, including her research in conservation.
It's amazing what that energetic connections with, whether it's with humans, whether it's with animals, that is this level of connection that she gave you that you are giving to other people, and it's so evident in your personality and the care that you give to everything that you do. And you're maybe not Jane Goodall, but you're Filipe DeAndrade, and that is, it's really an amazing story to hear that what that kind of clicked in you to continue, because once it's the awareness, right, of what it means to be such a human, to give that to people. I want to go back to, one of my colleagues who introduced us, NASA.
NASA's amazing. Shout out to NASA.
Shout out to NASA. So she shared with me the video of the moment when you won the Nat Geo, the Wild to Inspire short film competition. And it's, an older video. I think that was in 2015 that you won that, yes. Where they announced you winning, and then you coming up on stage and your mom coming out. And I was in tears. The host of the event was in tears. Can you tell us what winning that competition and what was it that you had created for that competition, and then how did that change the course of your career?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I think just to back that up a little bit, I think for any photographers, filmmakers, creatives, writers, editors, anybody listening to this right now, this is the most common question I get is, how do I do what you're doing? Like, how do I work for National Geographic, or how do I tell wildlife films? Like, how do I do what you're doing? And there's this idea when I was not doing this for a living that this opportunity is only available to some of us. This opportunity, has to find us and has to be presented to us in order for us to live out our dreams and live out our passions. And when I think about my own story, that couldn't be farther from the truth, because, the truth is I applied for countless internships with National Geographic when I was in college. I was studying film and wildlife ecology and conservation. I wanted to blend the two and make wildlife films. But, it never worked out quite the way that I thought it would. In fact, when I finally got an internship with the production company, Fisher Productions in Utah, I thought I was going to get a job and that was going to set me on this path going forward, and it didn't work out that way. So I went and lived in the woods for 6 months and hiked the Appalachian Trail. I didn't always make the most responsible decisions, but I made the decisions to follow my heart and to follow my passions. And when the opportunity for the Wild to Inspire film competition came up, I was living and working in New York for a production company, and I was simultaneously working on a DirecTV commercial campaign. So I was overloaded. I mean, I was working 90 or more hours a week, like just to make ends meet, to try and pay off my college loans, out of state tuition at University of Florida. And I saw this opportunity, this competition where the winner gets to go to Africa with National Geographic, as the universe like calling me and me being lucky enough to pick up the phone. I mean, this was the most delicious slice of life pie I've ever sunk my teeth into. And of course, there was no guarantee, right? Like I spent about a month making my my short film entry, and they could have said no, and I could have been right back where I was. But I knew that if I didn't take this chance on this competition, I would never forgive myself. So I created a short film called Adapt, which you guys can find very easily. It was a Vimeo staff pick, so I was very proud of that. But if you just Google Adapt Filipe DeAndrade, you can watch the film. And that was my entry. And ultimately, it got me to go to Africa, which National Geographic gave me about 5 weeks over there. And I said, thank you. Buy me a one-way ticket and I'll let you know when I'm coming back. I stayed for like over 4 months, went to 6 different countries. And I think it's that experience for me, as again, somebody else who's listening to this that wants to follow in the, in a similar journey. It's not about how many no's you receive. I was turned down from internships. I was turned down from jobs. I was turned down from assignments. I submitted photos and received rejection letters. I mean, countless. Like, it took me years. And one of my favorite stories is Michael Nick Nichols, who I think is the best photographer of all time. It took him 10 years to get in with Nat Geo. So my point is, it doesn't matter how many no's you get. All it matters is that one yes. And a lot of times that one yes can come from yourself. It can come from setting money aside, from, putting an assignment together on your own dime and going out and making something happen and then sharing it with the world or with the editors of Nat Geo or CreativeLive in hopes that, something more will happen. But ultimately, it wasn't that one decision to apply for this, film competition that got me in with Nat Geo. It was the relentless effort of never giving up on my dream, my plans, my goals, my ambitions, that inevitably it was going to happen. That's how I always looked at my dream. It was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. And that was my time.
What do you believe about mindset that or where did you come to learn that mindset? Because if you're able to visualize all of these things happening versus getting one rejection and saying, oh, not meant to be for myself, like, was that taught to you from your childhood, from your mom? Like, where do you think you got that from?
That's a great question. I mean, I can't remember which book it was off the top of my head, but one of my favorite quotes I've ever read is, we are a residual self of our past thoughts and experiences. And so the person you are today, and I even use that quote, something similar to that, in my short film Adapt, where I say, I believe that we are who we are because of what we go through, not in spite of what we go through. So in my personal life, I had to overcome a lot of challenges. Again, being raised by a single mother, living in poverty, growing up in Cleveland as an illegal immigrant, and feeling the pressure of what that circumstance starts to take a hold of you. And fortunately, having a mother that, I always tell people I was lucky enough to be raised by a single mother. Not I was raised, but I was lucky enough, because I got to witness through her challenges, through her suffering, through her efforts, that this life is truly what you make of it. And when people say, lace up your boots and go to work, they don't realize that some of us have a lot more lacing up to do. The journey to getting to where you need and want to be can come with a lot more hurdles, but ultimately those hurdles prepare you, and for me, I think I adopted at an early age that a situation wasn't a problem. It was just something that I have to do, so that when I became older, receiving no's wasn't what was going to define me. It was just a learning ability. It was, why did they say no? What could I have done better? Are these the types of people that I want to be working with? What was the energy in the room that didn't allow me, or this situation to work out the way I wanted it to, and apply that to the next thing. When I applied for my first job in New York City, after hiking the Appalachian Trail and having 17 cents to my name and hitchhiking to New York City and sleeping on couches and bouncing around, until I inevitably got a job, the first job I applied to was at a post-production house. And I thought, I'll be an editor. Like they make, this is a well-known place. They've won a lot of Emmys and Oscars. And if I get this job, it'll set me forth on this path of film. And it was solely for editing. And they were like, what are you interested in? What are you doing? And I'm like, well, I just got done living in the woods for 6 months, and let me tell you all these stories, and I want to travel the world, and I want to photograph wildlife, and I want to do all these things, and I want to be an explorer. And they're like, you're applying for a job as an editor, right? Like and when the report came back, they were like, sorry, we're not giving you the job, but we think the world of you. We think that you're going to go on to do these great things. I was pissed. I was upset with myself because I needed to put food on my table. I needed a job. But by not getting that job, it opened up this opportunity to where I did get a production job in New York City that allowed me to travel, that allowed me to shoot, that allowed me to work with directors and directors of photography to more harness the skill set that I wanted to use. I was looking for money, and by them telling me no, they gave me an opportunity.
I've heard you say that in order to, or I don't know if it's in order to be successful, but that you yourself, you just do what you love that you would do for free, and then things happen. It is not that you were doing things for free, but is that sort of the message that you put out there to people, or can you talk to me a little bit more about that sentiment? Because like you just said, if you're doing something for money, it's a very different energy and resonance that's happening.
Exactly. And of course we have to make money, right? Like we as creatives, we have to be able to support ourselves, because doing things for free and to build our portfolio or to harness our skill set isn't going to keep us alive. So we have to get good at the money side if we want to do what we want to do. But more so in the beginning, and while being respectful to other people's circumstances, right? Like there's single parents out there, there's people that are, in their 50s and 60s and still wanting to live out their dreams and wanting to give everything up and do what they love, or even after retirement. Like I met so many people on the Appalachian Trail that were like, I always told myself that when I retire, I'm going to give myself this thing that I wanted to do my whole life. So we never truly lose that passion. But obviously with some circumstances, there are more hurdles than other. But in respects to living out your dream, I truly believe that if you put a time limit, if you put a time stamp on how much you're going to allow yourself to chase your passion and to make it happen, you should never even begin. I mean, I used to live in LA, and I would tell my friends this that are actors all the time, because they would say, I'm here for 2 years, and if it doesn't happen in 2 years, then I'm going to go back home, or I'm going to get a job at a bank, or I'm going to try to then what's the bother? What's the point? Because life doesn't work that way. I mean, I'm sure we all as creatives, you have personal stories where so many times you've wanted to give up, so many times I've wanted to give up, and I thought it was over for me. But that persistence factor, what it does is, if you're a creative, if you're a passionate individual and you want to make something, you have a fire that's burning inside of you. And the more you live your life, the more challenges you overcome, the more things you go through. Those are logs that are chopped up and thrown inside of the fire that burns in you. If you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not taking chances, if you're not getting no's, if you're not getting rejections, then guess what happens? That fire starts to sizzle out. It starts to diminish and it starts to go away, because those no's, those challenges are what define your skill set and creates the callus around your heart that allows you to endure. And so I truly believe that if you want to do something, and if there's a fire that is burning in you, don't give yourself a time limit with your dream. Just take your dream and turn it into a plan. Get proactive, get creative, start to visualize in a month I want to be here, in 6 months I want to be there. Who are the people that are doing what I want to be doing? Let me reach out to them and try and get some feedback, some advice, or even go and work with them. I tell people all the time, like, blow up your heroes, like hit them up on social media and be persistent. I want to come work with you. I want to shoot with you. I'll do it for free. I want to learn with you. I mean, if you go and work with somebody that you admire and you give them a free month of your time and you're hardworking and you're talented, they may hire you after that, you know?
I think as you're talking to this, it's like, for me, it comes back around to fear that a lot of people, including myself, will have, fear of being rejected by that hero of yours, fear that you'll continue to, to get those no's. And I can only imagine what the world would be if we were all able to look at fear as opportunity, challenges as opportunity, and it's so inspiring to continue to, see people and hear people talking to the way to, that they live their life without that.
Yeah.
Was there?
Well, sorry, and you hit on
No, go ahead.
You hit on something that's so important. And this word fear is the invisible monster, right? Like, all you have to do is call back to Hollywood films, and the scariest films, the most impactful ones, are ones where you never even see the monster. You don't, like Blair Witch Project. I mean, that was like a societal phenomena, right? It was, I mean, I remember being, I don't know, I think I was like in middle school or something when I first saw that film, and it was everywhere. I mean, people were like, this is real, right? Like, this is happening. Like it was a big deal. And even in scary movies, a lot of times the most impactful and the scariest ones, you never see the monster. Why? Because they are playing off of the psychology that the biggest, most scariest, most like intimidating monster is the one that you create in your head. That is a psychological breakdown where the situations that you are fearful of, rejections, getting turned away, like having people hate your work, that is the monster that you're creating inside of your head. And that's a lot scarier than actually going through rejections and getting no's. Because once you get that, at least you've tried, and at least you have another step that you can take. But a lot of times people don't allow themselves even to start because of that invisible monster. So you got to defeat that invisible monster before you can defeat the naysayers, before you can prove anything to yourself.
Absolutely. And yet, and we're faced with that in the mind stuff every day. It's like it's a continual thing, and you can get better at not, pushing it aside, but it continues to be there. And so how do you battle that? I mean, are there specific practices, or have you just learned it by doing over and over and over again?
So I think a beautiful thing happens when you start to understand your emotions and you start to channel that energy in different ways. A lot of times I get messages every day like, aren't you afraid of, photographing jaguars? What were you feeling when that shark came up to you? Like, what about that venomous snake? Like, weren't you afraid that it can bite you when you were taking those photos? And I think the more you put yourself out there, the more you realize that fear is necessary, that fear is an important, energy to be experiencing, because it can keep you safe. It can keep you educated. It's just a matter of channeling that energy, asking yourself why you're going through it, and redirecting that energy towards a positive thing. And fear, I believe, is not there to keep you from doing something. Fear exists to make you ask yourself, am I doing this the right way? What kind of situation am I getting myself into? Am I as prepared as I could be? What experience is the subject, is the animal, is the person going through on the other side? It's there to make you stop, think, be present, and channel that energy in a new way. It's not there to overcome you and to cripple you. That's where I think a lot of times people make the mistake about fear, is they go, that scares me, I don't want to do it. I never, ever, ever resolve to that mentality. If something scares me, I ask myself, why does it scares me? Is there a learning opportunity? And ultimately, how can I channel that energy towards something positive? And that may keep me from doing things in certain ways, but it doesn't keep me from learning and from growing. So it's all a matter of understanding your emotions and being able to channel that energy. And the best way to do that is to put yourself out there, is to have life experiences, is to take chances. Because ultimately, like we're all highly migratory beings, right? Like this is a beautiful planet we live on and we should share it and we should learn from each other, but there is no substitute from experience. And the more experience you have, especially as a creative, the better you are at doing what you want to do.
I agree. If you don't get out of your head, then you're never going to have those experiences that it sounds like to me, like you have that full awareness, like it's conscious that you ask yourself, okay, here's the situation. What am I to learn from it? What am I, so it's this constant awareness that of what you're doing that I think a lot of people don't have. And that again takes practice. I want to talk about your show Untamed. And so you kind of somewhere it says, I read like you went from college student to hosting your own Nat Geo WILD show. Tell us about what this show is and just how it came about. What does it mean for you and your life?
Well, it came about in a very interesting way. I mean, I didn't want my experience with National Geographic to be like a one-night stand. I wanted to be a love affair that would last for the rest of my life. And so I, after going to Africa, came back and I told them like, all right, what's next? Like, let's do a show together. I immediately walked off stage in Sun Valley Film Festival in 2016 after presenting, the film that I made over in Africa. And I don't think they were ready for that. The people that I, grabbed and took to the side and was like, all right, I want a show. Let's do it. And they were like, what? Like, dude, you just stepped off stage. Can you give us a minute to process all this? But ultimately, I ended up pitching Nat Geo on the series concept for Untamed, where me and my best friends drove around documenting wildlife in a ambulance that I bought and converted into a camper, not necessarily even by choice. It was just, financial restrictions that if I wanted to be a wildlife photographer, I had to give up certain things like rent, you know what I mean? And monthly bills. So that was the cheapest way to go. And luckily Nat Geo was into it, like we put this trailer together, we put this series concept together, we drove the van up to Washington, D.C. and let them take a look at it and pitch them. And here's the universe working in an interesting way. They pitched us the exact same concept. They pitched us the exact same series, me and my best friends and, who I'm still working with today, Brian Magari, my business partner. They wanted us to do the exact same show. They just called it Philippe's Wild America, which, let's be honest, if I got inside of an ambulance and drove around the country in something called Philippe's Wild America, it sounds like I'm selling like exotic burritos out of the back of this thing. So I didn't know if that would, I didn't know how many neighborhoods I would be allowed into with an ambulance with Philippe's Wild America spray painted on the side. So luckily we kept the title Untamed, and season 1 was in the States. And then for season 2, I wanted to be a little bit closer to wildlife and travel a little bit less. So we went down to Costa Rica. And now that, we're all excited about this Disney acquisition of National Geographic, it's going to transition into something different, a little bit more exciting, and hopefully be on Disney Plus so that every subscriber can watch it digitally.
That's amazing. One of the things that you said kind of clicked back to the beginning of the conversation, in that when you hop up the stage and said, Nat Geo, we're going to do this thing together. Like a lot of people might say to you, oh, you're so lucky with what you get to do. And like, you worked for it. Nobody, you made that happen. And so I think it's just an interesting way of looking at how you've accomplished everything is just your ability to not take no for an answer. Tell us more about the mission behind Untamed as the series is now.
Yeah. Well, and briefly too, like you bring up such an important point, because a lot of people, that word luck, one of my favorite authors, Malcolm Gladwell, he says like luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I truly believe that, like, you become luckier, quote unquote, the more you put yourself out there. You put yourself more in line to have luck if you're out there, if you're working, if you're creating, if you're taking chances. you're in the environment where things can go your way and positivity can happen. So that's absolutely critical to understand for anyone. Nothing is given to you in this world. You know what I mean? So you have to be constantly working for it. And even when you have the stage, or share the stage, which I'm lucky right now to be sharing the stage at National Geographic with a lot of other amazing, accomplished, brilliant explorers, it doesn't mean that you're set. You have to keep working. You have to keep challenging yourself, and you have to keep pushing your boundaries. So with something like Untamed, what I'm interested in is creating this presence, creating this alternate character in conservation, where when I and a lot of other people think about conservationists and presenters, we might see like the 60-year-old white male, maybe with an English accent and proper and done up. And that figure that, like that across the pond Ken doll, if you will, is not who most of us are. You know what I mean? Like I don't look that way. You don't look that way. The people operating this series don't look that way. We're all unique individuals with unique backgrounds and stories. And what I was seeing in the conservation space was that a lot of the stories were the same, and it alienated a lot of people. I mean, the most rewarding messages I get are from other minorities, or even, from women telling me like your story about your mom, your story about an immigrant, being an immigrant, your story, like how you look different, sound different, like have been through different things. It gives me hope that I can enter this space. So Untamed for me, are you still there? Okay, there you go. Untamed for me is not just about sharing wildlife stories, but it's about sharing my story as a different character in this space, to give hope and to give a platform to other people that are looking, for that microphone.
Which is such a beautiful thing. And I'm curious if there are any other stories. You said you have heard back from people who have said that they're inspired. Has there been anybody who you have seen get out and do something based on what they learned from you?
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is, man, there's some incredible stories, but I'm trying to think of which one I want to tell, and if I want to call somebody out. Wow, that is a great question.
And we don't have to call anybody out if you don't want to go there, but I'm just, it's cool to see, just like your moment with Jane Goodall, like to continue the full circle of paying it forward again. And because maybe let's just go and talk about your education commitment and focus, because along with the conservation work is also your focus on education. And so tell us a little bit about why that is so important to you and what you are seeing just in general from feedback from people that you're helping educate.
Okay, so I think I'm going to try to answer both questions in the same answer because I have I don't know, I have this weird thing where like I don't want to I don't know, it feels weird, but I don't want to talk about like somebody else in a way where like I changed their life. I don't know, that feels weird, but so what I do want to do is I want to share a story where somebody else changed my life in a way that I hope I'm doing for other people. So when I found out about jaguars eating sea turtles, it was in a 2011 natural history documentary series. And this series, it was in North America, produced by, I believe, Discovery and the BBC. Absolutely beautiful. It's narrated by Tom Selleck. You can feel his mustache brushing against your earlobe as he's doing the narration. I mean, this is as Americana as it gets, right? Like every time he talks, there's just a guitar strum happening in surround sound inside of your core. I mean, it's beautiful, it's perfect, and it's the story of North America's wild backyard. And they talk about the jaguars and the sea turtles, and they talk about it for like less than 5 minutes. And that sequence really sparked an interest in me because with having a background in biology with big cats, you know, I had never heard of this particular story. I know big cats as, you know, strong, formidable, like, you know, lions chasing down gazelle in the savannas of Africa, or tigers stalking, you know, like their prey, like in the corridors of India. But I'd never heard of jaguars and then a aquatic species like sea turtles. That's just different. So it touched on it briefly, and it always resonated with me. And then one day when I went to Costa Rica, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do one of the stories that we're going to tell is on the jaguar. We don't have the money. We don't have the time. We don't have the resources. It's going to be way over budget, but I have to feed my soul with this. And so it ended up becoming a 1-hour documentary on Big Cat Week and one of my episodes for Untamed. But when I was out there, the biologist was like, hey, do you mind if we hire a local, and you mind if we bring him on board? He can be your camera assistant. He's one of my best friends. He's worked on these productions before. And I was like, yeah, go for it. His name is Alonso Sanchez. He's an amazing photographer in Costa Rica. And we were stalking the jaguar, Alonso and I. He was my camera assistant. And we were about 2 weeks in, and we had like a couple days left more than 2 weeks in. And we had a couple days left to go, and we had not anything from the jaguar. No jaguar kills, no footage, nothing. And we're sitting in this ranger station. It's pouring down rain. God's crying on earth. I mean, you're in Costa Rica in the wet season, so you could imagine. And he looks at me and he goes, how do you even know about this? Like, why are you even here? He's like, people in Costa Rica don't know that jaguars are eating sea turtles. How did you end up here? And I was like, dude, I saw this documentary series in 2011, like at the time, like 8 years ago, you know? And I was like, and it inspired me to come and learn more about my favorite animal, the jaguar, because I didn't know that they hunted in this way. And the fact that the sea turtle is over 100 million years old, it's an interesting natural history behavior. And it was him and I in this ranger station. And when I told him that, and he was like, what's the name of the series? And I was like, North America. He literally started to weep. He started to cry. And I was like, okay, like, what, dude, was it something I said? Like, what the hell's going on? And he said, I filmed that entire sequence. And I was like, what? And he's like, the BBC came to document the jaguar. A hurricane hit, much like it did when I was there, and they had to evacuate. They got nothing from the jaguar. And so they left him with the trap cameras. They left him with all the gear. And he, this field assistant, this local Costa Rican, ended up documenting what came on this North American natural history series that inspired me to go there. And we realized that under the same roof in the middle of nowhere, stalking the jaguar. And 2 days later, we got our jaguar sequence.
Man, do you have stories. I mean, it's those moments. I don't know, those moments of whatever you want people call it, synchronicities or what have you, that just make you wonder. I'm curious what makes you wonder? Like what? I don't know.
I mean, I'm not trying to follow like a one-track mind here. I honestly, I can't thank her enough. But like what my mom gave me, what my mom did for me when I was young really set the foundation for the rest of my life. And when I would ask why, like any other kid does, she indulged me. She answered my whys the best that she could. And if she didn't have answers, then she would give me a book. I mean, I was a voracious reader as a child, like I still am to this day. I try to finish a book a week. And the reason is whatever you've been through in this life, somebody's gone through it before you and they've written about it. So the opportunity to learn is available to all of us. And the opportunity to accelerate our growth as individuals is available to us. It's just a matter of putting in the research, putting in the homework, putting in the time. And so the fact that my mom indulged my curiosity, answered my whys, and then when she couldn't, she made me learn for myself, it kept me curious. And when you think about the natural world, I was sharing a story earlier on a podcast with National Geographic where in 2006, they discovered the largest aggregation of marine biomass on our planet. It can be seen from space. Hundreds of whale sharks, animals, over 40 feet in length, and then giant oceanic manta rays, pelagic pancakes, with 12-foot wingspans coming together to feed on some of the tiniest creatures, like the spawning of the little tiny fish eggs. And the fact that this behavior has been hiding under our noses for this long, and it was just recently discovered, not even 14 years ago, is a sign that there are so many secrets that nature has yet to reveal to us. And so when I think about wonder, like you just said, everything is still out there for us to explore. Like, don't leave any rock, overturned. Like, don't be afraid to scratch any surface, to keep asking why, to keep indulging in your curiosity, because much like the sciences, for every question that you answer, 100 more questions come of it. And so you're never done exploring. And especially in nature, there are more secrets to be shared and there are more things to discover, especially with the advancements of technology. We're finally at a point, and I'm sure there's plenty of creatives on here, technology has finally caught up to our creativity where it's no longer, if I had this, I could do this, right? Now it's, I have this, what can I do with it? What can I learn with it? What story can I tell? What areas of the world can I explore and how can I share that with others? Like technology, when applied to the natural world, in my opinion, it's the most beautiful recipe for how to live your life.
Phil, I could talk to you all day. I know you've got 2 more podcasts that are programs that you're doing just even today. That is such a beautiful way to end this conversation. Not just the talking about wonder and curiosity, which I truly believe is the most important thing for creatives. And I believe that we are all creative. That's what we say here at Creative Live. There's a creator in all of us. And so that the way you frame the technology and that it's, that everyone is on an equal ground right now in terms of it's up to you to use your mind and your heart and your soul to create. And you are clearly doing that day in and day out. Thank you so much for your time, for being here for the second time. I was going to ask, where can everybody follow you, find you, make sure that they know everything you're doing?
Yeah, thank you for the plug. I didn't ask Kenna to do that, but thank you now that you did. Like you brought up earlier, my Instagram, my handle is at Philippe, FILIPE _ DeAndrade, DeAndrade, Instagram. And then if you go on natgeo.com/untamed, you'll be able to see our Untamed series. And we have a documentary out right now called The River in the Wall, and it's available to rent or to purchase on iTunes. And it's something that I'm incredibly proud of. We made that documentary directed by one of my best friends and accomplished filmmaker, Ben Masters. And it's an important subject right now. So thank you for that. But I have a question for you, Kenna.
No.
Yes.
I ask the questions here.
So what I find fascinating about what you do is you yourself are a creative. You yourself make and put things out there for the world to experience. And you're an amazing writer. You have such a way with words that resonates, and talking to you is easy. I think it's easy for you to pull things out of people because you're such a great listener. So I'm interested in, for people listening at home, for me, myself, what is that one element, that one ingredient, that one variable that you yourself, being in this position that you're in and getting to talk with all these different people, these people that come on your show, these people that navigate through your channels, what is that it factor, or is there one that you see as a commonality between people that are lucky to do what they love to do, are lucky enough to call their dreams their jobs?
This is what happens when there's one host to one host. Well, first of all, thank you for your kind words, and definitely not expecting the question back at me. But I have been so fortunate to be able to, whether it's been as the host of CreativeLive for 10 years and all of the instructors and world-class people who have come through, and then so many folks here on the podcast getting to know their personal stories. It's a number of things that we already talked about in this conversation today. It is people who actually sit down and do the work. A lot of people out there acknowledge that they are not necessarily the greatest photographer out there, the greatest filmmaker out there, but they outworked or out-tried 99.9% of the other people who gave up. And ultimately, there's got to be something inside of you that you can continue to wake up every day. And we all have our emotional roller coasters, especially as creatives. But it's the people who sit down and not knowing what's going to come out, but just give yourself the space to do that, that I think is kind of the through line. And I also think it's people who go through personal transformations that then have the desire to help other people transform as well. I often hear, you teach most what you need to learn. Mm. And I love that sentiment, because as you're going through the process of learning something, so much so that you feel the need, you want other people to experience the same thing. And ultimately that is the teacher within us.
Wow, that's beautiful. And what I love about that is, so many times we want to put it out there that we have all the answers, when in fact, like, we're answering questions more often than we're, you know what I mean? Like through the struggle. The struggle is a beautiful thing. The process is a beautiful thing. So what you just said, it's such a revealing thing, because you don't have to be an expert necessarily to be sharing the process, because in doing so, you're learning and you're teaching.
Exactly.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Well, thank you for that question. Philippe, again, thank you so much for your time. Everybody be sure to go out. And I really appreciate that you mentioned the latest film that you created. So important, so powerful. Just give us the quick byline of what that film is about, so people will go and check it out.
Yeah, so The River and the Wall is a feature-length documentary, and we wanted to have a different conversation around immigration and around the wall. Nobody was talking about like how a physical barrier would impose on the ecology, the wildlife, the landscape of, the border. And also at this critical point where, Mexico is Texas' third largest trading partner, when most immigrants, as a matter of fact, overwhelmingly most immigrants are not coming across through the border. They're actually overstaying their visas. How a multi-billion-dollar physical structure, addresses desires but not actual solutions. And then also working with Mexico, because we're actually at net zero with Mexico when it comes to immigration. Mexico is a partner in illegal immigration of the United States because they're facing some of the same things on their southern border, and it's not actually anywhere close. Mexicans are not here as illegal immigrants over other, countries. Overwhelmingly, they're not even close to number one. So they're a partner in ours. So I think the film addresses a lot of facts over opinions. And so we spent 3.5 months on the border on the Rio Grande by mountain bike, horseback, and canoe as to understand the area intimately and to talk with people, because ultimately I feel like this is still a conversation we need to be having. And an investment into foreign aid is an investment into our own economy, because the one thing I discovered was my own story out there, where the reason you flee a country is because you feel like you absolutely have no choice. So a lot of times people want to say, well, they should be helping themselves. But the reason that people are coming into the country illegally is because, their families, they themselves feel like they have zero options otherwise, and they're faced with, their own mortality every single day, which as parents, which as individuals who want to survive on this planet, I'm sure we can all empathize with, we would do drastic things as well. So the film is really about having conversations and sharing stories, rather than, making hardline decisions on what we think we know, and spending the time out there to get to know the border, because there's so much more to it than a proposed wall. I think it's a beautiful culture filled with beautiful people and beautiful stories.
Well, thank you on behalf of all of us who would never have the opportunity to experience what you have, for creating that film, for creating your show, for everything out there that you're doing, for all of us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. And thank you for having me.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off for now, everybody, but you can check out the episode that we did here on CreativeLive TV with Phil. You can go to our Facebook page, search the videos, and you can check out what's coming up on CreativeLive TV by looking on the upcoming schedule, keeping tabs with that. And you can get all of the previous episodes of We Are Photographers, whether that's on our website, creativelive.com/podcast, or anywhere that it is that you get your podcast. So thank you again to Filipe DeAndrade, and I will see you all next time here on CreativeLive TV. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.